I don't like to argue, so I say nothing and fume for days.
How do I set boundaries without sounding like a jerk?
I hate the idea that I might accidentally offend somebody, so sometimes I'd just rather say nothing at all.
Welcome to the Language Alchemy Podcast, and thank you for joining me today. This is your host, Alejandra, a transformative communication teacher and coach who's devoted to helping multicultural individuals and couples interested in personal growth transform their lives and relationships through conscious communication. Thank you so much for being here with me. Today is the last episode of 2023. The Language Alchemy Podcast is your place to bring awareness to how you communicate and learn transformative communication tools that can bring forth peace, harmony, compassion, equality, and equity in your life, your relationships, and all members of our human family. In this week's Transformative Communication Podcast workshop, I am going to talk about how to go through transitions consciously. While it's true that December 31st and January 1st could be days like any other day of the year, they actually aren't, because billions of members of our precious and diverse human family engage in celebrations to end the year, we could call it one cycle, and cultivate hope and capacity to begin another year or another cycle. Life is made of cycles. Any living being has cycles, including you, me, and our relationships. And knowing how to consciously transition from the end of one cycle to the beginning of another is an important aspect of conscious living. At this time of the year, a lot of people think ahead. They want to be done with the cycle that's ending, the year that's over. And that's why, to prepare for the new year, people tend to focus only on the future, on setting intentions for the new year, on writing down lists of resolutions, and maybe even taking action for new things like signing up for a new yoga studio. And while there's a useful place for that, if you want to be really prepared for the transition of a cycle ending and a new one beginning, you need to be aware of the language you're using to prepare yourself for that transition. And this is what most people don't do. But not you, because in this podcast episode, you are going to learn about the language of transitions so that when January 1st comes around, you'll be ready to start the new year with awareness, authenticity, and confidence. When you're going through a transition from year to year, to end and begin consciously, you need to pay attention to the language of the three parts of a conscious transition. And these are acknowledgement, desire, and commitment. Let's start with the language of acknowledgement. The language of acknowledgement is about taking the time to reflect on the cycle that's coming to an end. What I mean by this is not just doing a review of the year. No, I'm referring to an honest reflection of the lessons learned, the skills and capacities you developed, and the reparations, corrections, and recalibrations you need to make. If you don't take the time to reflect on the cycle that's ending, you are likely to forget the lessons you learned, the skills and capacities you developed, and you are also likely to neglect to give attention to the reparations and corrections that are important for you to make. And if you forget the lessons you learned in 2023, if you don't bring them to mind and acknowledge them and keep them available within you, then in 2024, you may make the same mistakes unnecessarily. Life has a way of bringing us more opportunities to learn certain lessons until we learn them. An example is when you, or maybe people you know, keep dating the same kind of person just to get the same kind of outcome. The relationship doesn't work. So that may mean that you have not taken the time to acknowledge and learn the lesson. At the end of the year, this is the perfect time to do this. If you don't take the honest time and space to reflect on the cycle that's about to end, you miss the opportunity to remember the skills and capacities you developed. And so when you need these skills or these capacities in 2024, you may feel vulnerable, unsure, scared, or overwhelmed, because it will seem to you that you will have to learn or to face something big, or that you have to start over. For example, when I was working with a client who's a professional basketball coach, he would often tell me that he didn't have the discipline to learn new communication skills or any kind of skills. He had the firm belief in the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. In the course of our work together, I helped him see that he would have not become a professional basketball coach unless he had the discipline to learn new skills, including communication skills. And when he was willing to take a pause and do the work to break down all the various skills and capacities he had to learn to become a professional coach, that's when he understood that he had so much ability to learn new skills if he became open to them and could imagine the benefit that these new skills would bring to his life and especially to his marriage. So go to your calendar and set aside some time to do this reflection. And if you're not convinced, let me tell you this. If you don't reflect with compassion, clarity, and honesty about the cycle that's ending, and you don't acknowledge the moments, the interactions, the relationships in which you behaved or communicated in an unskillful way, then you will not take the time and energy necessary to make reparations or to recalibrate or to redirect where you're going in your life and relationships. And this means that you may lose relationships in the future. You may burn bridges, or you may not show up in your relationships as the mature and conscious adult that you are. So take the time right now and consider the lessons learned, the skills and capacities you developed, and the reparations you need to make. And if all this seems a little daunting and you'd like my guidance with this, I want to invite you to a 2-hour online workshop I am teaching on January 1st. In that workshop called Enjoying Thriving Relationships, a Proven Process to Getting Inspired and Staying Committed, I am going to be there with you, guiding you live through a tried and tested process to reflect on your 2023 communication and relationships, connect to your skills and capacities, and make the necessary adjustments from a place of inner knowing, self-love, and capability. I'll tell you more about the workshop at the end, but if you know within that this is what you need, then pause the podcast and go to languagealchemy.com/thriving relationships. And after you sign up, come back to listen to the rest. I'll mention the link again, languagealchemy.com/thriving relationships. After you take the time to reflect by using the language of acknowledgement, you need to move on to using the language of desire. This is when you connect deeply with yourself and envision the kind of life and relationships you want to have, develop, and maintain in the new year. You can ask yourself some questions such as, do you have a big birthday this year? Will someone you love have one? Will you go and visit someone? Do you have plans for hosting someone who will visit you? Is there some particular experience you'd like to have with friends or family? Is this the year when there will be a graduation, or maybe you are graduating? Or what's one big thing that may happen in each season of the year? When you ask yourself questions like these, you are considering events and experiences that you are likely to have in 2024. After you do that, you can ask yourself how you want to show up. What and how do you need to communicate? And which experiences would be fulfilling for you and others if you show up with clarity, with confidence, or with compassion? When you are connecting to what you need to communicate and how you want to show up, you are using the language of desire. When you truly engage in the language of desire, you feel inspired. So if you do this and you don't feel inspired, then your language of desire may need some changes. For example, when I ask in my communication coaching sessions about what my clients would like, some people respond with, I don't want to be insecure. Some people respond with a grammatically negative statement, such as, I don't want to be insecure. Expressing a desire using language about what you do not want is not going to leave you feeling inspired. And what's more, this kind of language is going to be ineffective and make it very hard for you to go to the next step, which is using the language of commitment. Remember the workshop I was telling you about that I'm going to teach on January 1st called Enjoy Thriving Relationships in 2024? Well, this part, using the language of desire, is people's favorite part of the workshop because I guide them through a very powerful visualization that helps them connect to their desires and longings that they were not even aware of. Oh, I'm so looking forward to teaching this workshop that I have not taught in 4 years. I love this workshop because it helped so many people make profound changes and go through joyful transformations in their lives. Okay, I can talk on and on about this workshop, but let's talk about the next step in this process of conscious transitions. Once you've used the language of acknowledgement and the language of desire, you need to move on to using the language of commitment. This is when you can make a list of intentions, when you can look at each desire and you can decide which steps you need to take to fulfill those desires. I have never seen a magic wand that will make what you want appear in front of you out of thin air, especially when you connect to your deep longings. So you need to break them down into all the steps you need to make so that these longings do come true. This is when you get creative with your language of commitment. And this part is so important because if you don't do this last part, it's as if you have spent hours cutting magazines to put together a vision board, only to look at it a week later and then put that vision board in the garage behind that piece of furniture you inherited from your grandmother. If by now you know that you'd like to go deeper in your inquiry, in your exploration, that you would like to feel inspired and have more accountability with yourself, then come to the January 1st workshop. Give yourself the gift of 2 hours to be guided in a fun, gentle, and powerful way so that you can transition consciously and powerfully from 2023 to 2024. A woman who participated in this workshop many years ago, because as I said, I haven't taught this workshop in 4 years, came to this workshop with complete openness. When we did the visualization, she saw herself writing a book, something that she had not given much thought to. She came away from the workshop with such clarity. She was elated because she connected not only to the longing of writing a book, but also to the steps she needed to take, like asking her family for support, talking to her employer, leaving her job, and learning to hire and communicate with a researcher. Well, let me tell you that she was able to do all that, and now she is an author whose book allowed her to be seen as an authority in her field. So by coming to this workshop, she became clear on how to have thriving relationships with herself, with her work, with her family, and with her life. And that can be you in 2024 with whatever you connect to during the workshop. I hope you sign up and start the year with me. To find out more and sign up, go to languagealchemy.com/thriving relationships. And now let's recap what you've heard. In this episode, we talked about how to consciously prepare for the transition of the cycle that's ending, 2023, and the cycle that's beginning, 2024. I shared with you that when we transition consciously, we pay attention to our language. I talked about how I use and guide my students and coaching clients through a 3-part linguistic process by consciously using the language of acknowledgement, the language of desire, and the language of commitment. I also invited you to sign up for the 2-hour online workshop I'm teaching on January 1st, where you get to go much deeper with your longings and desires, feel inspired about them, and come away with the steps you can commit to start the new year with clarity, confidence, and authenticity. To sign up, go to languagealchemy.com/thriving relationships. Thank you so much for listening and Happy New Year. Y Feliz Año Nuevo. Until next week, or shall I say until next year? Okay, both. Until next week and until next year. And as we say in Argentina, ciao, ciao. Original music by Gary LaPaul. You can find all links in the show notes at languagealchemy.com.